Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here this evening. Good evening and welcome to the Community Development and Transportation Committee for September 27th, 2022. I'm Randy Knighton, the City Administrator, and of course we have Council Member William Morthland, Council Member Christine Hall, Council Member Lee Hills, Council Member Peter Vanstrom, and City Attorney David Davidson. The purpose of committee meetings are for the city departments to convey information to the mayor and city council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, members of city council, and the city administrator. And the city administrator serves as the chair of committee meetings. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, we do not take comments from the public unless specifically authorized by mayor and council. Public comments or questions are received at the regular city council meetings on the second and fourth Monday of each month and on the fifth Monday in open forum. We do encourage citizens to engage our online platforms, and if you have any questions or need information, please feel free to contact the respective departments, and we will ensure the information is provided to you. We also will mention our service, any service requests or need to report a concern can be processed through our web service portal. I would like to also highlight the upcoming public education and information opportunities pertaining to the $180 million bond questions, which will be on the ballot in November. There will be several opportunities for residents to learn all aspects of the bond questions and proposed projects over the next several weeks, and we certainly encourage everyone to access our city website for dates, times, and locations of those public meetings. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Community Development and Transportation Committee meeting for August 23rd, 2022. I'll entertain a motion of approval.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Council Member Hills. Do we have a second? Second by Council Member Morthland. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. See, you got me, guys. You guys have got me doing this now. All right. The first item under community development, item number 2, consideration of approval of the Tree Bank Fund Administration FY 2023 project list and approval of a budget amendment BA 25491-401-10-24-22 in the amount of $553,000. Ms. Bromberg.
Thank you, Randy. I'll start off with a little bit of explanation about what this is and some background for you, if we can get the slides to advance. So this is from the Unified Development Code section 12.1.7. This is in the tree protection ordinance, and there is a section in there regarding tree bank funds, and it is intended that the funds, I'll be back up a little bit, the funds come from when tree removal permits are obtained by residential developers and there is specimen tree removal. Those fees go into the tree bank fund and then get expended by planting and maintaining trees and other applicable landscaping for public benefit on public property or private property within a public easement within the city. And all of these are subject to mayor and council, hence the reason why we're bringing them forward to you this evening. Just as a point of clarification, in the past, unless there's been a lot of conversation or any confusion, questions about the projects themselves, the project list tends to go on consent, but that, of course, that is up to you guys if you prefer it not to be once it goes through that process. But in the past, it's been one of those items that we had a lot of great conversation here at committee about, and then that was the end of the conversation. It was really just a matter of getting that project list approved so the department could continue with using it. So this is just a little bit of a status update from the fiscal 22 project list that was approved by mayor and council, and then the estimated funds was about $565,000 in fiscal 22. This invoice to date is sometimes a little bit tricky because of the way that funds get spent and invoiced and billed, but to the best of my ability, we have expended just over $160,000. Many of these projects you will see in the coming slides when we talk about the fiscal 23 project have had some delays or some timing issues, and so they are still viable projects and are going to be asked to move forward to the fiscal 23 list. Some are complete, and so they come off the list, and some may have been replaced by other projects and will go away as well. Just to show you a little bit of the percent by department, the request from fiscal 22 is broken by department. There are a few departments who did not have any funding. In 22, the majority of the funds were contributed towards projects by the Environmental Public Works Department. And of the expended amounts, they spent about 55% of the total amount that was spent. Recreation and Parks has about 30% of the total project request and spent about the same. And then Transportation had about 13% of the total project request and have about 5% of that was expended. So what we're going to be talking about today is carrying forward those fiscal 22 projects that are remain to be completed that the departments feel are still viable projects, as well as the new 23 projects. So that would be a total package to come together with the associated budget amendment. We are requesting an agenda of vote and that the budget amendment requested be included with that. And then this, of course, would be on the next available council agenda. Just as a quick overview for the fiscal 23 project request, which we're going to go through, this is the percent breakdown of the total being requested. We have, as the budget amendment stated, $553,000 in total ask. $25,000 to administration, $15,000 to community development, $78,000 to environmental public works, $325,000 to recreation and parks, and $110,000 to transportation. And then we'll go through each of those projects. Any questions so far?
Where does the admin department put the trees?
I will go over that project in just a second. All right, so let me pull up the spreadsheet. It is just way easier to see that way. Okay, so the administrative grants program is a $25,000 matching program that is for the tree planting partnership program. This is available through an application process that goes through the grants division. The HOA, for example, that may make the request will bring forward matching funds, matching labor, in order to show that they're invested in the project, and they can request I'm pretty sure it's 50% matching fund, if I have my facts straight. Danny can help with any details on that if you have any questions. That used to be a standalone budget item, and it was absorbed into the Tree Bank Fund a few years ago. The second is the first ever ComDev request. We've not made requests in the past. This coming year, we will be celebrating our 30th year as a Tree City designation, and so we felt like as a part of Arbor Day, maybe it would be a good year to do something a little bit bigger. So we're actually recommending that we have plant a total of 30 trees around the city in various locations. We plan to partner with the departments and see what locations make the most sense to be able to do that, but that's something that we think would be a really great way to celebrate 30 years as being designated as a Tree City. Next, we have a few projects from Environmental Public Works. I'm going to try and get them on the same screen, but it's not going to play nice. The first one is the transfer station. This project was originally approved in the 21 project approval, but just based on timing, we want to wait till they're finished with the project before we plant trees. So we've continued to carry that project forward. It's about $30,000, and it is recommended as a 23 project carry forward. There's a couple of bioretention areas that are associated with the stormwater component of the project. And so there's some trees and shrubs that are associated with that and some other trees that would go around the transfer station that would be included in that project. The next is tree maintenance and installation near the water utility wellhead. There's some trees that need to be removed there in order for us to better maintain that area. And so that is also a previously approved fiscal 22 project that is recommended to move forward to 23. The next is tree maintenance at the recycle center. This too was as well a 22 project that was recommended to move forward to 23. There's some tree trimming that needs to be done at the entrance to the recycling center, as well as where the flag is and a few other trees that just need to be cut back from the building. So it's good tree maintenance activities to be used those monies for. The next one is tree removal for the City Hall Water Quality Improvement Project. This is actually a part of a grant application process. We've identified some trees that actually are in decline and are going to need to be removed eventually anyway. And they are great locations for the green infrastructure, they're called bioslopes, to be installed. And so this is for the maintenance component to remove those trees. And as we said, it's very select. We've already identified those as being in decline. Before I move on for environmental public works, are there any questions about those projects? Okay, great. So fire and police did not have any requests. And so then we have our recreation and parks. If I can get, there we go. So the first is a fiscal 21 project that continues to be moved forward, waiting for some roadway project elements to be completed. It's the front entrance to Big Creek Park, $15,000. It is recommended to be moved into the fiscal 23 project list. Then we have the final phase for the Groveway Park entrance. Again, another 22 project that we're looking to move forward into 23. It's the front entrance enhancements. Then we have the East Roswell Park front entrance. This is a new project. It's landscaping, planting along the already funded trail connectivity projects that are along Fouts Road from the community garden to the start of AC Lavender Drive. You'll note that there are some texts that's highlighted in red. My interpretation of the code in the past has been that irrigation as an installation is not eligible for the tree bank funds, but that's been, it doesn't specifically say it is or is not included. So that is what my interpretation of that has been in the past when we've talked about these projects. So I have highlighted that. It is really this mayor and council's decision on whether or not you want to fund that irrigation with the tree bank funds or not. The total includes, in this case, it's $35,000. There's $23,000 for trees and shrubs and $12,000 for irrigation. So I have talked with the departments about this and said we would at least point that out, and it is your choice of whether or not we want to include those funds or not. We do have the capacity to pay for it if you choose to do so, and there's a couple of places where you're going to see that highlighted. The next is another new project at the East Roswell Park Arts Center. It's the rear parking and the dog park area, $50,000, estimated for about 40 trees. It's to reestablish canopy in that area. The next is the East Roswell Park ADA parking, about $15,000, also a new project, tree planting in the new parking area that was recommended to be added based on the ADA assessment in the area. Next, we have the Old Roswell Cemetery Tree Planting Plan. This is also a new project, $50,000. As you know, over the last few years, the cemetery, which is on the National Register, has had a lot of rapid loss of trees just due to time and things that happen to our old trees. And so in order to start to replace those, there's a recommendation to begin replanting in order to continue to maintain that desired character in the cemetery. Next is the Old Mill Park Plaza landscape. This is also a new project, and it's execution of the landscape plan at the plaza. There's about 6 to 8 trees and some small to medium shrubs in order to support that lower level canopy. It was about $20,000. And then we have the City Hall turf and tree planting. This is replacement of some removed flowering trees in the small parking lot islands in the front parking area. This is the second area where we do have about $15,000 is for the trees, and $5,000 of the request includes upgrade to the current irrigation system. And then Rec and Parks, as well as Environmental Public Works and Transportation have also used this in the past, will have made requests for planting funds and maintenance funds in the past. The planting fund is a not to exceed project amount, so that we have a small set aside for projects that may come up throughout the year. We can come to committee with the details, and the funds are already available. It's just a matter of making sure we're putting the projects out that that mayor and council support. We've already listed a few ideas that are there that are kind of the low item. They're items already on the list, but they're not elevated to big project status yet. So we've got an idea of where those might be. And then the maintenance fund is also an annual approval, not to exceed amount that is used for general landscape tree maintenance. If we've got some trees that are in decline and them falling could damage good trees, we want to make sure we do that maintenance. Trees that die, sometimes they're leaning over other properties, and so we have a responsibility to take care of that. And so Rec and Parks has access to those funds through this. And then we have the transportation projects. They have three. The first is a carry forward. It's the Canton Street Tree Replacement Project. Phase 1, which would be from Alpharetta up to Norcross. There's about 20 trees that would be removed, and then there's 21 trees that would be replanted. This is, includes the tree removal and the stump grinding, does not include the repair to the sidewalk. That would be funded separately. That's something that had come up as a question in the past. It was a previously approved project that's been asked to carry forward. And then, of course, as I mentioned, they have also made the request for the planting fund for fiscal 23 and the maintenance. They have $50,000 for planting and $10,000 for maintenance. They are thinking that they've got some replacement of some things in the roundabouts. The hard scrabble multi-use trail has some areas where they need to possibly do some tree replacement due to after its warranty. We've lost a couple, as well as the Old Alabama multi-use trail in the Big Creek to Wooten Road area. And then the maintenance is just for as needed for pruning and tree removal. So there's a total of $553,000 in requests. Per our finance department, we have $600,000 in eligible allocation from the tree bank fund. So we are just under budget in our request. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bromberg. Yes, Councilmember Hall?
Thank you for that detailed information. I just have a quick question. The Canton Street tree replacement, why are we taking those? Are those trees damaged? Are they not Dutch elm, but they have the disease?
Correct. And actually, Kayla, our city arborist, has been out there, has been working with transportation, and we have a number that are either dead or damaged. So.
Yeah, so I went out there with Lee from transportation a few times. Oh, sorry. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I went out there with Lee from transportation a few times. So it's the trees that are in that immediate downtown area. Once you get to more of the area that's kind of used to be single family houses, but now it's just like the businesses, that's kind of cut off when you said those two streets. So what's happening is that they're mostly just maples that have outgrown. You kind of see they're popping out of the roots. They're damaging the sidewalk there. And a lot of them, I think either A, had bad pruning cuts or just fell in the storms or something. So a lot of them have rot on them, and they're just growing out of that space, which is pretty typical for trees in that urban space. You do need to replant them every 10 to 15 years.
Just to follow up, do you have a plan on notifying the businesses along that section as to when this is going to happen, so people aren't surprised if trees start coming down?
That would be, I believe, up to transportation in that respect. I'm not sure how they'll handle that.
I'm pretty sure they will be going through, because there's probably access onto their property they may have to do just to be able to get to the tree with the equipment coming in. So I was exchanging looks with Greg back there, and there's a number of those property owners that we would just have to let them know that this is when we're coming through ahead of time.
Yeah, just so that they have that notice and aren't alarmed.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councilmember Hills?
Yes, thank you. I know this is a budget amendment. I'm guessing, I just wanted clarification. This isn't something where if the project hasn't happened in the fiscal year, let's say 22, that it just rolls into 23. So you all have culled out some things that are no longer viable, or?
Correct. So when we look at the new round of projects, they start with the previous project list, see what's been expended and what has not been expended, and determine whether or not those projects do want to be carried forward. In the past, projects automatically rolled forward, and there wasn't necessarily a very good tracking system. And it also wasn't necessarily driven by the needs that we're finding that the departments have today. It was a very different selection process. And so when I joined the city, we started having these conversations about how we could best use the money, and decided not to have them automatically roll over, but to reevaluate them on an annual basis to make sure we wanted them to roll over. But we try and track it and let you know this is something we've continued to support. It's just that based on timing, COVID, all these other things that have happened, we've had to delay the actual expenditure of the funds.
Okay. And then for the ones that had the additional irrigation note in there, is that saying that it's included in the budget and we can spend the money on that? Or that's a tip off like, hey guys, you guys need to figure out pay for
So
that?
my interpretation in the past, when you read the definition for the funding, which is, and I will repeat it, is planting and maintaining trees and other applicable landscaping for public benefit on public property or private property within a public easement within the city. There is additional language, which is very long, and I did not copy into here, that talks about that you can use, for example, if we're doing a project in an area where we also need to account for stormwater and we want to use tree boxes, or we want to use a pervious paver system that allows for those trees to be closer to the roadway and be able to live longer, then we felt that that was a suitable choice of things that this council could decide, yes, we're going to also fund those as a part of this project. Irrigation is kind of one of those things that isn't necessarily specifically included or excluded from that language. And so in the past, we said we really felt it made more sense for that money to be spent on the trees themselves, as opposed to long-term irrigation systems that may or may not be necessary to get the trees established for long-term. And so that's really what we're putting out to you. We've highlighted it in the past. Staff has said we don't believe that that's an expenditure that should be spent by the tree bank funds, but it's really up to, since it's not specifically stated one way or the other, we're leaving it to you to decide whether or not you want to or not. So it's about, I think, $17,000 in total is all we're asking in this particular round, but we want to make sure that we have that conversation with you.
Any further questions? Yes, Councilmember Vanstrom.
Yeah, there's a mention in the planning fund for 23, the tree plantings and the roundabouts. I would really like to step back and take a look at our roundabouts. There's so much potential for continuity in the city that's lacking, and that's one area that we could have further discussion on. Is it trees? Is it bushes? Is it trees with artwork? Is it artwork by itself? I think we've all talked about that, and maybe this is a good opportunity to maybe Mr. Knighton, you can create a way that we could talk about that a little bit more in the future, not too distant.
Sure. I think perhaps at one of our upcoming committee meetings, that would be an appropriate conversation to have. Obviously, the gateways and roundabouts, which are highly visible, are areas that we want to ensure are enhanced properly and have a consistent theme. So definitely formal conversation that we can have very soon. All right. Any further questions? Yes, Councilmember Morthland.
Under the Recreation and Parks, the Old Roswell Cemetery tree planting is the same thing as Founders Cemetery, is that right?
No, sir.
Two different things.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And the Roswell Cemetery, the trees that were down in that cemetery were oak trees?
I believe that's the case, but I would have to defer. I don't think there's anything besides oak trees out there, is there? Are there?
Yeah, those are mostly all oak trees that are in there. And we continue to limb up. We have a private company that comes in and gives us the status of all those trees in there.
Sure.
But as they reach their, end of their lifetime, they start, splitting, falling apart. And then when you get that damage in the cemetery, it's, there's a lot going on with that. Tree roots popping up and, you get graves everywhere. So they're trying to get in and able to remove any that would cause more damage if they could get it ahead of time, but at the same time turn around and replant because, that kind of gives the character of the cemetery, those big oak trees.
And are we going back with oak in there, or are we doing something
I
different?
would think we'd probably go back with oak in there.
Okay. All right.
Any further? Yes, Councilmember Vanstrom.
I kind of have the same question along Canton Street. We're taking trees out. Are we?
Are we replanting? Is that, yeah, so they're taking out 20 trees and replanting with 21. The reason with 21 is I believe one of the trees fell on its own and was never replanted. So they are replanting them. We did recommend to transportation a variety of maple that is it was more bred to be in that more compact urban environment and will grow more up this way than broad. So it's not gonna really hopefully interfere with the businesses as much and won't need as much pruning either. And also by our code too, they do have to replant because it is in a public street, so they should have a tree every 40 feet.
All right, good. Yes, Councilmember Morthland.
Is there a reserve that we're trying to stay within instead of spending all the budget? Because I see we have a little bit of leftover. Is there set number there?
There's not. It's really up to this council and whether or not you want to. Because we revisit on an annual basis, and have the planting fund with the $50,000 for a couple of departments in case extra little projects come up. We haven't felt the need to have that reserve. In the past, we just happened to not have enough projects to fill it up. This year we had a few we actually knocked to fiscal 24 so we could stay under budget. But it's really up to this council whether you want to or not, but there isn't necessarily any need to. We have a limited planting season and we have a lot of activities that each of the departments are trying to do. So inevitably there's probably something that's gonna fall off and move to later in 23, which is technically fiscal 24, just by the nature of the way things go when we try and plant. So I think we're comfortable with going in where we are. And if we did have any other projects that came in, there is, still a little bit of extra funds that are there and other funds that could come in throughout the year that could then be added to that on an as-needed basis.
The reason I ask is I was starting with that Founder Cemetery question. There have been a lot of big, old, good-looking trees that have fallen in that cemetery. If the residents of that area came together and said, we would like to put together a proposition to request a certain dollar amount. Based off of these projects, there's a nice little set-aside money that they could look into, but again, we're building as we go.
Right, so I think the only, and correct me if I have this wrong, anybody in the audience, but the only amount that we have that's available from a partnering perspective is the $25,000 from the tree planting partnership program. All the rest of these will be expended by the city in those locations. And so there's not necessarily a setup for any sort of partnering with those. Doesn't mean we can't, but that's just the way that those are currently structured, is those are purely city projects and then the partnership program is separate.
Right, that's what spurred my interest in that, was the 50-50 match scenario that you were talking about earlier. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to move this item forward. Yes, motion by Councilmember Morthland.
Yes, sir.
All
Motion.
right. We have a second. Second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you. Item number 2 under community development. I'm sure we needed some clarification on the irrigation. Okay. Yes. The city attorney has advised we may need some clarification on the irrigation item. That was that included in
So the budget amount that is included in the projects today include that, and so unless you want to specifically exclude it, I don't need you to do anything.
All right. Everybody clear and okay? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 3, which is under community development, consideration to award a contract for the update of the historic properties map with Luminor in the amount of $60,500. Is that Mr. Gaines?
All right, thank you and good evening, everyone. As noted by the city administrator, this proposed item is to award a contract to Luminor Consulting to update the city's historic properties map. There's a memo contained within the package that kind of outlines everything, but I'll just hit some of the highlights here as part of my conversation. The existing historic resources map has been in place since 2003, and it's based off of data that was created in 2001. So for the purposes of primarily for our Historic Preservation Commission to conduct its activities, one of the recommendations from the historic district master plan from a few years ago was to update this map and make it more current and based off of real life data. Also, you've got the fact that there are 5 distinct categories for classifying properties within the district, and some of that gets a bit jumbled up when you've got a parcel, because it's based on the parcel, but you may have structures on parcels that are classified one way that are new, not historic, or somehow don't fit the classification of the overall parcel. So one of the things that we're hoping to accomplish with this effort is to have a bit of a distinction there and give the Historic Preservation Commission a bit more leeway when it comes to making decisions on applications for certificates of appropriateness. So as part of this solicitation, we received 6 proposals. 3 of the proposers were interviewed, and we, as a committee, agreed that Luminor Consulting was best suited for the project. They are a women's business enterprise, minority business enterprise, classified firm based in Alpharetta. Started here in Roswell. They do a lot of this work across the state and the southeast region, and they are very excited about the project and came in at a proposed cost that was very palatable compared to some of the other firms that submitted. So with that, we are bringing this item forward and asking you all to consider it on the next regular meeting agenda. So with that, we'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gaines. Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you for the information. So I know there was quite a bit of discussion regarding what is considered historic homes, and we recently updated some of that language. How is that going to come in play here, and how is that going to be addressed so that we don't have if the home was built before X year, it's automatically historic, even though it's perhaps not truly historic in the sense of an eyesore and it's just standing there?
So what we're looking for is, obviously this is gonna be a map, and the parcel might indicate the house, if it's built, it's older than 50 years, it'll say historic. However, if they had a shed or a detached garage that they added in, say, 1990, what we're looking for with this document will give some leeway to staff and the Historic Preservation Commission to say, yes, we understand that the house itself is historic because it was built in 1900, but the homeowner built the detached garage in 1990, so that would make it not historic. So if anyone comes in and says, we want to remove the detached garage, we would indicate that is not historic and be able to use that. So we're looking at that in the documentation, because we're not just getting a map, we're also going to have a report as well. So because the map is going to probably say, let's say the house is 1900, so that will show it, the parcel will show as historic. But with the documentation that we're going to getting from this group will be that, the garage was done, only 30 years ago, so it's not historic, which would then give us the leeway based on also the text amendments that you all just approved recently that allows staff to do intrusion and different things, demos that we might be able to do as staff, or does it go to the board? So that's what we're hoping. We're going to work with them, the group that we selected, in order to add that to the document this time around, so that it'll be able to move forward that way. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes, and that's specified in the contract, or it will be specified in the contract with them?
We will be yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further? Yes, Councilmember Vanstrom.
And that's all for 60?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Okay. All right. Any further questions or comment? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to move this item forward. Motion by Councilmember Vanstrom, second by Councilmember Hall. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Under transportation, we do not show any action items at this time. Under administration, item number 4, consideration to submit an FY 2022 application for a Reconnecting Communities Pilot Discretionary Grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Knight, and good evening, everyone. This is a opportunity for the city to apply for, I guess, one of our first big federal grants. We've been working with our firm that we have hired, Sustainable Strategies, Mr. Andy Seth. It's been a lot of coordination. Mr. Blitch has worked from the grant side, putting together a lot of information for this particular application, and Mr. Leatherman has done the same thing, so we've all kind of come together, and transportation. So I want to show you, I want to take just a minute to talk about this grant, as this is the first time this grant has been offered before, and it's the first time, of course, that we're going out for it. But it is a Reconnecting Communities grant, and some of the goals of this grant is to remove, to retrofit, or to mitigate barriers, particularly, they call them facilities. And I'll show you in a minute what the barrier is, but it's anything that gets in the way of community connectivity, mobility, access, or economic development, anything that might be a barrier to that. This grant focuses on, we're looking at the planning process for right now to get our project ready. And in the planning process, it'll of course look at the very things that were the goals, the removing the barriers, the mitigation, but ultimately to get the planning documents completed, including cost estimates, which obviously is very important to move the project forward. This next slide is ugly, but it gets the point across very well. So this is out of our bike ped master plan, and I wanted it up there just so that you can see in general all the different spokes and all that are coming out of the bike ped master plan. Specifically, this is called Project M. It's not anything clandestine, it's just letters, and this one's Project M. So you go, I don't have this is Big Creek Parkway, Big Creek Park. This is Project M. It's a multi-use trail that is going to connect from over here at Old Holcomb Bridge Road, all the way up through here, under Georgia 400 to Big Creek Park. That's the barrier. That's the barrier that is clearly seen, cuts our city right in half. And we have projects over here and projects over here. This is an opportunity to put together some planning documents with a grant that removes or mitigates that barrier. And that's what we're excited about, is Project M. And then I have even a better picture of that that you can see how it's going to happen. So this is Big Creek Park. And basically what we can do with the multi-use trails, we can come out and hit the Big Creek area. And then where the bridge is at 400 is going to be wide enough and tall enough for that multi-use path to go under. And we want to make sure that happens, plan it accordingly. Then we'll follow the Big Creek Park through the wetlands floodplain area. Have a tee off right here that can go to Liberty Square, so we're tying yet another park to this for connectivity, and then coming around as we follow the creek over to Old Holcomb Bridge, which also has other trails coming off of that on the plan. So it's just a beautiful opportunity to put together for some federal funding to get this project planned and ready to go. Not construction documents, but all of that upfront planning that it takes to get it ready. So what we're doing tonight is asking to move forward with seeking the approval. If we do, it's due the 13th of October, which is like right after the mayor and council meeting, which is why we're here tonight. We're seeking approval to apply for $2 million for this planning grant. The match for the city would be $500,000, and it would be for those things you see: public engagement, the feasibility to be able to mitigate this connection issue by going under the 400 bridge. Is it feasible? Can it be done? All of this planning will do that, which, by the way, it is feasible, but we have to prove that. And then the conceptual and preliminary engineering, including cost estimates to support the construction. As far as the match, we're not exactly even sure when that's going to hit. This is the first time this grant has been offered. It's through the federal government. I would assume, I'm going to venture to say it's probably in the FY24 budget at some point during that year. Could possibly be 25, because that's not that far away either. we will plan on looking at that for the next year's budget so that we can be ready. If we are awarded this grant, we can move forward with that. But what I'm saying tonight is we're not committing the $500,000. This is an opportunity to apply and to work through this process and get the $2 million that we can use that we would have to spend on our own to do this project if we don't get the grant. So with that, Danny will answer any questions that you might have.
Yes, thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Thank you very much, and that's very exciting. Is the bridge going up under, or the bridge going up underneath the bridge or underneath 400?
It's actually going under Georgia 400.
Yeah, tunnel.
It doesn't look like a bridge when you're on Georgia 400, but it is a series of bridges.
So it will be able to, there will be, that's part of the feasibility plan that we're looking at, but in some preliminary discussions, there should be enough width and enough height to be able to make this multi-use path happen under 400.
Cool.
Kind of looks like a waterway.
All right, thank you. Any further questions or comments? Councilmember Hall?
Thank you. It sounds very exciting. Just wondering if there were other projects or how did, I missed, I had to step out for a second. How was this one selected versus any others around the city?
So this particular project, when we met with our consultants and all the department directors met individually, we were looking at what projects might fit for a lot of this new funding that came out. And one of the funding opportunities is this Reconnecting Communities pilot program. This particular project, which we already have on the books, it's already part of the bike ped master plan. So the reason it came out is because this particular funding particularly looks at mitigating things that disconnect a community by either connectivity, mobility, access, economic development, and quite frankly, Georgia 400 cuts the city right in two. So it's actually a perfect project, in my opinion. I'm not on the judging committee, but in my opinion, is a perfect project to fit this funding. And that's what our consultant has been doing, and also our department directors, is what projects do we have? We know what projects we have. They know what funding is out there. And when we got together and looked, they started putting those together. They built a roadmap. And this is one of those, and it just happens to be the first one that's come up. Y'all are going to be seeing others.
So just to follow up, assuming that we win the opportunity or win the grant and have the match, we would pretty much have a shovel-ready project for construction and then have to fund it. Is that?
Yes, and this particular grant also has a construction side that should be coming up because there's a lot of funds available in, well, hopefully, in some future cycles. I'm thinking they give us the planning grant, they're going to be really interested on if we come back for the construction grant, is what we're hoping that the funds build on each other, we hope over time. So yes, but we won't have construction documents, but we'll have everything but that. And then hopefully the next grant cycle would cover that, maybe in the building part of it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Vanstrom.
Yeah, thank you so much for considering the barrier, because I was just with a group of residents Sunday, and the conversation was there's just such limited capability to get across 400 from the east to the west to the east. So I applaud you for finding yet a new way to do that. So thank you.
Sure. I can see it viable as a trail without the road, but. All right, thank you. Any further questions or comments? All right, with that, we'll entertain a motion to move this item forward. Motion by Councilmember Vanstrom, second by Councilmember Morthland. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you very much.
We're excited.
Thank you. And that concludes all of the items on our committee agenda for this evening. We'll entertain a motion of adjournment. Motion to adjourn by Councilmember Hall, second by Councilmember Morthland. All in favor? Thank you very much.